The following video or story is by user Mike_Mike Can, who happens to be me, as I am the original content creator of that from Reddit. So basically, before I begin, I would like to give a shout out to Keera Lynn, excellent horror story YouTuber. Make sure you guys go subscribe to her channel, link in the description. And without any further ado, let's read the story. Her video will be featured later on. This is a recollection of certain events that happened in my childhood home that I had lived in for the first 11 years of my life. I am 20 years old now. For context, the house was built in the late 1970s. When my parents bought the house was bought from a widow. Her husband loved the basement, but unfortunately he died of cancer. It is unknown if he had died in the house or on his way to the hospital. Before I was even born, my dad experienced a growl coming from the TV in the upstairs bedroom. No one was there. It scared him to the point that he feared going into the basement at night for a month. Fast forward to when I was born. I had a couple seizures, which might be relevant, might not be, but one was in the house, and the last one when I was 2 years old. When I was 3, however, there was a storm outside. Now, I don't know how this is relevant, but my bed was right up against the wall, and as I was trying to fall asleep, I felt the bed from the backside, right where the wall is, lift up and slammed down right as I noticed it, as I felt myself starting to slide off the bed. No one could have been behind it. I ran out of the bedroom to tell my parents what had happened, but they just told me to go to bed. I always hated the door that refused to close that led into the laundry room. It led exactly there and into the power room. If you closed it, it would just open up at exactly 5:50 minutes later, regardless of the date, of the day, or the time. I used to try to close it all the time, but I wonder if it angered the entity. Regularly, I would hear the pipes banging and clanging together. I have never heard these sounds in any homes I've spent night in, even homes older than the one currently in. I would regularly wake up and hear whispers coming from the living room, similar to how my parents would talk while they were up and I was asleep. But the time was always between 1 to 4 a.m., with the most common of these occurrences happening at around 2:30 to 3:30 in the morning. I would also experience sleep paralysis on an infrequent basis, often around the same time as I would hear the whispers, but these whispers never happened during the sleep paralysis. I would feel a heavy weight either on my arms or chest, and when it happened, I would either have a bad day in some way, shape, or form, or I would get physically sick. My dad wonders if the entity made him aggressive, as there's times where he behaved far more aggressively than normal. Then my mother got sick, and there was one night where this happened, where I really had to pee, but someone was in the bathroom. So I went back into my bedroom, but then it became unbearable. So I had to use the downstairs bathroom after waiting 10 minutes of this not happening. And then I ran back into my bedroom. Shortly after I went back into the bedroom, my dad came into my room and wondered why I was up. I lied and said I sleepwalked because I knew he wouldn't believe me. After my mom died, that was when the paranormal events escalated. I would always feel stared down on a regular basis, to even hearing my Xbox going on when I knew I turned it off. But when I went downstairs, it was already turned off the next morning. These are the old 360 Xboxes that didn't have the auto turn off in the modern consoles, by the way. Then, when I was brushing my teeth, I saw a figure of a man in a top hat. which was creepy as he was translucent. I also saw him again doing the same motion in broad daylight, but heading down the opposite direction. Then, my neighbor's dog, whom was the most chill dog you would have ever met, you could literally go right up to the door, ring the doorbell, and he would just walk up and wouldn't even bark. He started growling at something behind me and bared his teeth. I was quite scared, as he seemed to go outside at the same time that I went outside, normally to head to school. After a few days of this, he was back to his old, chill self. I would see a shadow figure peering at me through the window at one night, close to Halloween that same year. But to reach the window, you would have had to have been 10 feet tall, which no human was ever that tall. Adding to the fact that I looked at it, it backed away. But you couldn't see through the curtains, and this was not an episode of sleep paralysis, because I was able to move freely about. Most oftentimes, it would also appear that someone was sitting on my bed, when no one was there. Just the indent of someone sitting there. I saw another figure from my own bedroom peering outside. It never communicated or acknowledged me. I would also see balls of light that would just stay there, as well as having very odd dreams, such as dogs coming out of the walls in the basement, doing this music motion in a panting way. We did not do any evil rituals or cleansings, but my dad regretted the decision of not calling in someone to make that cleansing. There was a time where the other door leading to the upstairs opened when I was watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. I walked up and put my hand out to feel the air. The air was cold. And when I moved out, it was kinda went dormant. Until 5 years ago, when Google Maps caught a face peering from the bedroom that my parents slept through, which didn't show up in the previous photos, and for some reason it's not blurred, which, if you don't know Google Maps, if they catch a face on the maps, they blur it to protect privacy. Even the device I was writing the story has been acting insanely slow and lagging, as if someone does not want the story out. I moved to a new house, and although I did not have any experience of it, I still get weird dreams about the first house due to it being in close proximity where I currently live. In the dreams, the house looks the same, but mostly empty. But every time I would check the basement in the dream, it would switch to another dream. Was this a demon or an actual entity that was very negative? I would love to know your thoughts, if this was a demon or just an extremely negative entity. Update. As I was helping my dad move some of what we call the things or supplies to the rental, we stumbled upon pictures of the old house. And the old house was red, different paint, and it did not have the deck. When I was born, the deck and stuff were there. My parents renovated it before this all happened. My dad said it was shortly after the renting, or the renovations, that he heard that demonic growl. Could that have been the initial entity that had been upset with the decision to renovate the house? Or could it have been just an imagination? Love to hear your thoughts about it.
I should start off by saying I'm no stranger to paranormal stuff. I've been around it my whole life. Phones flying across the room, handprints appearing on my arm after watching the Demon House documentary, and spirits hiding in the corners of my house. My sister used to be on a basketball team, so 2 days out of the week she'd have a practice and a game, which meant I'd be home alone for a few hours. I was around 14, almost 15 when the story takes place. To preference, before we get into the story, when they would leave, I'd lock the door behind them, and when they got back, they'd bang on the door to let me know they were home so I could unlock it. This is important to remember. So that morning, my mom and sister left for her basketball game, leaving me and my 2 dogs home alone. I always sat in the living room, which is on the other side of the wall that connects to the inside garage door. It had been an hour since they left, when bang, bang, bang. 3 loud bangs, and I know I didn't just hear it, because my dogs ran towards the garage door like they always did. But as I made my way to the door, the banging started again, and was getting louder and more aggressive, so I started to scream to who I thought was my mom on the other side of the door. I'm coming, hold on! The banging stopped as my hand hit the doorknob to unlock it. I unlocked the deadbolt, I unlocked the doorknob, and I opened the door. Expecting to see my mom and sister, I was greeted with nothing. No vehicles in the garage and no one standing there waiting. I froze and felt my body starting to panic and thought, maybe I'm going crazy, and thought I heard knocking. But then, as I stared into the empty garage, my dogs, who were still standing behind me, started to growl. I slammed the door closed, and as soon as I turned and locked that deadbolt, the banging on the door started again. Aggressive, loud, and I knew I wasn't imagining it because I was right at the door. I backed up and watched the door as my dogs continued to growl and stare down the door as if we were in danger. I ran to get my phone and the baseball bat I kept next to my bed and came back down. My dogs still staring at the door. I decided one more time to open the door, which was dumb on my part, but now I was in fight or flight. The banging stopped when I went up to get my bat. And when my mom got home, I told her all about it, and she didn't believe me and told me not to think about it. It was probably the house settling. A year later exactly, my mom was in our computer room, which is on the other side of the garage inside door as well. And me and my sister were sleeping upstairs. When I came down, I went to see my mom and say good morning. As I entered the computer room, bang, 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 on the garage door once again. I wasn't fazed by it, but my mom jumped and said, "What was that?" I said it sounded like the banging I heard last year at this time. My mom was freaked out and ran to the front windows to see if anybody was on our driveway. She called my baba, who lived a block away, to come over to block the garage with her car, so if anybody was inside of it, there would be 3 of us. When we opened the garage door from the outside, there was no one in there like the year before. My mom believed me after that point, and she told us that we are not allowed to knock on that door anymore to let others inside. We'd have to call or text. My mom and I talked later about it, and she said maybe something was trying to get into the house by knocking on the door, because it knows we open it when there is knocking. It has never happened since, but it is something that sticks with me. Many other paranormal things have happened since that point, but nothing compared to how scared I felt with every bang, bang, bang.
Hey guys, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please share, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you also go like, share, and subscribe to Keera Lynn. She makes awesome horror stories and posts weekly as often as she can, and has been a good friend of mine since kindergarten. I would love to have her check out your video or her videos, as well as check out my other videos. Link in the description.